b'leiv ish yashcheno v'tov tov yisamcheno. When there's worry in a man's heart, he should suppress it. Let a good thing convert it to gladness. And the Razal say that there's two pirushim to this pasuk. The word yischeno, yischeno midato. One is to change the sin for a samach. I mean, you should push it out of your mind, and the other is that he should speak about it, talk about it to others. And the Tzemach Tzedek says regarding that when you're talking to acherim, to others, it means others, somebody sitting opposite you, but one in mind with you. When you're sitting with a friend and you're discussing something, right, you get the power of the friend with you to deal with the worry. Tonight we have the master of dealing with lots of issues. Rabbi Taub has written extensively. A lot of you might have seen his columns in Ami magazine or have his book, which he's brought out, covering lots of these issues. He talks all over the world. He's been to Manchester several times. We are honored, privileged to have him here tonight, talking about anxiety. Before he comes on, I just want to say one other thing again, to thank the Herschel White Center for hosting this and helping putting this together with Rabbi South Manchester.
David, can I just ask you, can we just dedicate a little Nishmas, my husband, Avram Yaakov Ben Pinchaselig as well, because there's so many people here. So I'd like to do anything for an Aliyah for his neshama. Is that okay?
Amen. Amen. Yeah. Rabbi Taub, the floor is yours.
Hi. Oh, that's it. I'm up. Okay. Yeah. You hear me okay?
Yeah. How do we make you big so you're taking up the whole screen?
I don't control that. Yeah, I think you have to spotlight. I think that's what it's called here.
I think you just move the screen.
Yossi, are you there? Could you make the rabbi? If you can't, on your own screen, press pin video, and it makes the rabbi into full screen mode. Okay, we're all yours.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to pin the video, and I stopped my video. Okay, here we are. Oh, okay. So it's good to be back in Manchester. It's been a while. And if I can't physically be there, so through the miracles of modern technology, I can virtually be there. So I almost feel like I'm in Manchester right now, the land of the midnight sun, almost. I was thinking, by the way, it's 4 o'clock over here, and I was thinking, oh, it's going to be evening, and I was looking out your window, and I saw it's bright outside still, because it's still early, it's not even. When does the sun go down? 10, 11, whenever. Okay, so everything's divine providence. Everything is orchestrated by the hand of God. And it's interesting. I didn't have in mind to discuss this today. I actually thought about, this is we're doing this for many weeks. That's Hashem. God's help. We're doing this for many weeks. So I actually thought to speak about this later, but since you mentioned at the beginning the daily thought for today, the 25th of Sivan, I guess maybe it would be appropriate to elaborate upon that. So I'm going to get a little bit ahead of myself, and maybe to some extent this is putting the cart before the horse. But I guess sometimes you have to take a cue from the divine providence. So as we heard, today's thought from the Sefer Hayom Yom, the From Day to Day book that the Lubavitcher Rebbe compiled, says if there's a worry in a person's heart, which is something that King Solomon said in his wisdom, and he gave he suggested two pieces of advice. One is stop thinking about it. Take your mind off of it. And the other one is speak it out to someone else. And those sound like very different things. And yet they are both sort of permutations of the same Hebrew word. Yasichena, forget about it. Avert your mind from it. Don't think about it. And Yisichena, which means speak it out, talk it out. So it's interesting. Two things that seem very, very different from each other are, in Hebrew at least, hinted to in the same word. You see, Hebrew is a very rich language where there are multiple tiers of meaning in every single word. That's why, by the way, ultimately a translation into any language of the Torah, of the Bible, is going to be you have to accept that it is extremely limited, because every word in the Holy Tongue has multiple meanings and nuances and connotations, and all of them are there. There are multiple facets of every word, and sometimes two facets of one word can be even almost opposites of each other, like we see here, that the meaning of one statement from King Solomon can both mean forget about your problems or go and talk about your problems, which are two very different ways to responding to your problems. And yet they're both embedded or encoded into a single biblical phrase. So I wanted to, again, I had this in mind for a later week, but I think it's divine providence that it came up today. I didn't even think about the connection to today's daily thought. But now that you called my attention to it, it's just that the connection is so obvious. I think it needs to be, I think it's worthy of being explored. What does it mean to avert your mind from something? That first meaning of the word. Yasichena. Yasichena midaitoi. Remove it from your mind. Avert your mind. Don't think about it. It's like saying to somebody, don't think of an elephant on roller skates. Boom, you lost. If you tell somebody, don't think of an elephant on roller skates, so the first thing that happens is, boom, elephant on roller skates appears in your mind. Do we even have the power to not think about something? Even if I wanted to, do I have that power? And when we're talking about anxiety, this is a very important question, because if you think about it, most of anxiety is related to our thinking. Maybe all of it, actually. Because, there are different kinds of fear. I mean, fear is a basic survival mechanism. Animals have fear. It's sort of hardwired into our bodies. We have that fight or flight adrenaline rush. But there are different kinds of fear. So, for instance, there's the fear that you get when, let's say you're driving and all of a sudden another car comes out from nowhere and flies right through a stop sign, and you slam on the brakes, and you come this close to getting smashed into by another car. So that's definitely a fear. That'll, you feel that immediately, just that rush, that immediate fear. Then there's a fear of, I have a very important meeting tomorrow, which will affect many things in my life for the foreseeable future. And I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't feel prepared. And the stakes are very high. And I can't sleep all night because I'm thinking about that meeting. That's a very different kind of fear. You see, we call both of them fear, but they're very, very different kinds of fear. The main difference is that one of them is a response to sensory input. By sensory input, I mean what you see and hear and taste and smell and touch. And the other one is a response to a thought, non-sensory input. So one of them is coming from outside of you, and one of them is coming from inside of you. See what I mean? So you could have fear where, I'm walking through the forest and a bear jumps out. So that would be the first kind of fear. Sensory input. I see the bear. I hear him growl. The trigger for the fear is coming from outside of me, the bear. But then let's imagine I'm going on a camping trip next week, and I'm staying up at night worrying what will happen if I encounter a bear. So I'm not even in the forest. I'm at home. There are no bears at home. But I'm imagining what could happen if I will encounter a bear. So there's no sensory input here. I don't see any bears. I don't hear any bears. The only bears I see, I'm not seeing with my physical eyes, I see in my mind's eye. The only bears are imaginary bears, bears of the mind. And I think it's helpful to distinguish between these two things. Because, again, we call both of them fear, but they're really very, very different experiences. So, and they need to be handled in two very, very different ways. So again, just to drive a point home, okay? I'm standing at the ATM, taking out money, and all of a sudden, a group of guys surround me. So that's what kind of fear? The first kind, that's from sensory input and coming from outside of me, or the second kind that comes from thought and it comes from inside of me. I'm deliberately asking a little bit tougher of a question. See, on one hand, it's a little bit of both, isn't it? On one hand, I don't know that they mean anything nefarious. Maybe they're not going to do anything. On the other hand, it's kind of weird. I'm standing in an ATM and they're surrounding me. It's a little bit of both. Okay. So what if I'm not yet at the ATM and I start thinking about what if a bunch of guys will surround me? That one's much more clear. That's the second kind of fear. What if I'm at the ATM and a guy punches me and says, "Give me your money"? That's the first kind of fear. Most things have a little bit of both. There's something that's going on right now, and then there's an aspect of it that's me imagining or projecting into the future, predicting, and it's a little bit of an interplay between those two things. the way that I respond, so that, therefore my point is one situation doesn't have to be either or, one kind of fear or the other kind of fear. One situation can have both aspects at the same time. So for instance, I think the subtitle of this talk was dealing with anxiety during coronavirus and other times. So I think I should use a coronavirus example, right? All right. So let's say I'm worried. I'm walking down the street and I see somebody walking toward me and they're not wearing a mask and they cough. So which kind of fear is that? Or what aspects of the situation are the first kind of fear, and what aspects of the situation are more of the second kind of fear?
Corona
And
fear.
there's a little bit of both. There's a little bit of both. But the way that I'm going to react to each one of them is going to be very different. When it comes to something that is based on sensory input, I see something or I hear something or smell it or taste it or touch it, something outside of myself that's I recognize as a threat. What's the response? We don't even actually have to talk about this because it's so hardwired in us. We don't even really have to discuss it. You'll do it automatically. And the response is fight or flight. Either remove the threat or remove yourself from the threat. Right? Get the heck away. And that's really not very, complicated. And there's really not much to discuss. The question is, what do you do about the second kind of fear? The fear that now I came home from my walk and I keep replaying in my mind, oh my God, that guy, he walked past me, didn't have a mask and he coughed, and maybe I have it and I won't know, but maybe even I'll go get a test and maybe they don't have tests, or maybe even the tests aren't reliable, or maybe I won't be able to get one. Who do I call? I don't even know. So that's the second kind of fear. It's not coming from sensory input outside of me. It's coming from thoughts I'm having inside of me. So what do I do? When the threat is outside of me, so I told you what we do. Fight or flight. We either remove the threat or remove ourselves from the threat. But when the threat is happening in here, how do I address that? I can't remove the threat. There is no threat. It's my own thinking. I can't remove myself from the threat because, again, it's my own thinking. How do I remove myself from my own thinking? So this becomes the much greater challenge. And when we speak about anxiety, that's what we're talking about. Anxiety means not the fear we have that's a God-given survival impulse that guides us how to react to things going on around us. That's helpful. That's productive. We need to have that kind of fear. Anxiety is the fear that we have because of how we are thinking and how we are imagining and projecting into the future, or replaying the films of the past and causing ourselves to have a feeling that's not a reaction to anything that's actually happening around us. There's nothing that we can see or hear or taste or smell or touch. It's all just here. It's all mental. It's either a memory of the past or it's an imagination of the future, which imaginations of the future are usually just repurposed memories of the past. We take something we've already seen before and we, rearrange it and cut and paste it and turn it into a prediction for the future. But the point is, when we're talking about anxiety, we're talking about the threat is here. The threat's inside my own head. The threat is my own thinking. And how do you get away from your own thinking? So going back to what we said before. Daiga belev ish, Yashchena, says the verse, and our sages interpret it, Yasichena midaitoi. Remove it from your mind. Avert your thinking. Don't think about it. Okay, thank you. I would love to not think about it. What can I do though? Right? Don't picture an elephant on roller skates. And we all picture an elephant, and you did it twice already. I fooled you 20 minutes ago, and I just fooled you again. But you can't help it. You can't help it, can you? Don't think of an elephant on roller skates. A third time. Okay. So what am I supposed to do? This thing's coming to me and telling me, I walked by the guy, he didn't have a mask, he coughed. Oh my God, I'm going to get corona. Oh my God, I'm going to the hospital right now. What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to run? I'm tormenting myself, but I have nowhere to go. Anywhere I go, if the tormentor is here, then anywhere I go, I'm going to bring him with me. There's no escape. That's why people self-medicate. That's why people numb themselves so that they can't think, because they just need a break from thinking. Or why people, distract themselves and stare into their screens for hours and hours, just to give the brain a rest so they don't have to torture themselves constantly, right? So what are we supposed to do? If the threat is outside of me, if the threat is sensory input, then that's a God-given survival impulse telling me to either remove the threat or remove myself from the threat. No problem. But if the threat is a meditation, I call it a meditation, a negative meditation that I'm doing right now, where am I supposed to go? Where is safe? Where can I get relief? So this is what I want to share with you today. I was once in Brooklyn. I don't live in Brooklyn. I live in Long Island, which I don't know how expert the Mancunians are in New York geography. But Brooklyn and Long Island are very different. Brooklyn is, well, for the purposes of this story, the only thing you need to know about Brooklyn is it's a tough place to park. So I'm in Brooklyn, I'm driving around, and I wasn't parking, actually. I was just driving through, actually. But I noticed a guy had a sign on his driveway that said, "Don't even think of parking here." Right? Not do not park here. Don't even think of parking here, right? Like a true New Yorker. Hey, don't even think of parking here, right? Okay. And I saw that sign, and I read that sign, and you know what the first thing that happened was? I thought of parking. I told you I didn't even need a parking spot. I wasn't even looking for a parking spot. I was driving straight through, but I saw that sign, don't even think of parking here. Boom, the first thing that happened, I thought of parking there. You can't tell somebody not to think of something. You can't even tell yourself not to think of something. In fact, telling yourself not to think of something is going to make you think of it. Like the elephant on roller skates. So then what are we supposed to do? So let me ask you a question. Do we know the times tables? Yeah? Okay. So what I would like everyone to do is practice the times tables in your head right now. Not verbally. Don't say it out loud. Just think it. I mean, even though everyone's on mute, but I'm saying for the purposes of this experiment, it's best that you do it non-verbally. You just do it mentally, okay? Think the times tables in your head. And since nobody's listening, you don't have to show off and do difficult ones like 12 times 11. You can do a simple one. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 4 is 12. Whatever you want to do. Okay. 4 times 6 is 24. 4 times 7 is 28. Whatever it is. Okay. All right. Let's for 30 seconds. All right. 30 seconds. We're going to think times tables. We start wherever you want in the times tables, but 30 seconds. Okay. Really do it. Really do it. Okay, fine. That's good enough. So the first thing I'll point out to you is when I said, really do it. Did you think to yourself, do what? I'm not doing anything. I'm just thinking. Or you knew exactly what I meant when I said do it, even though by saying do it, I didn't mean a physical action. I meant a thought, thinking the times tables in this case. You knew what I meant. You were perfectly comfortable with my using the word do. And there's a reason for that. Because thought is an action. Thought is a behavior. Thought is something that you do, albeit in your own head. And the reason that's important to know is because just like we have control over our actions, yes, we have control over our actions. If you say, well, I couldn't help myself. He just made me so angry. I hit him. Well, no, you chose to do that. And what's the proof? What's the proof? I had a guy tell me he couldn't help hit his kids. The same guy, his wife told me he got into a fender bender and he was ready to get out in a road rage incident and beat up the other guy. And the other guy wasn't as easy to bully as he was able to bully his own kids. The other guy took out a tire iron, and he started swinging it at him. And all of a sudden, oh, I'm sorry, everything's okay. Don't worry, all right. And I apologize, All of a sudden he was like a little, like we call it in Yiddish, a lamela. He was like a little lamb, all docile. So he says, I can't help it. The kids make me so mad. I can't help. Well, obviously you can't help it. When you need to control yourself, you didn't think it was a good idea to punch the guy with a tire iron, so you didn't. So obviously you are in control of your behaviors. People make excuses, but we're all in control of our behaviors. Okay, so you don't have to do anything you have an impulse to do. You can stop. You can not do that action. In fact, even furthermore, not only can we control what we do, meaning our physical actions, we can control speech. We don't have to say everything we feel like saying. Does this dress make me look fat? You don't have to answer that, Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Okay? So you don't have to say everything that pops in your mind. Well, here's the next step. Just like you don't have to do every action that you feel like doing, and you don't have to say every word you feel like speaking, we also have the power not to think about things that we don't want to think about. Why? Because thought is a behavior. It's something we do, and we have free choice over behaviors. Whoa. Now I'm contradicting myself. I just got done explaining how if I say, don't think of an elephant on roller skates, bam, you're going to think of an elephant on roller skates. Or if he says, don't even think of parking here, bam, you're going to think of parking here. Now I'm saying thought is a behavior and you can control it, just like you can control what you do in physical action, just like you can control what you say with verbal speech. Which is it? You can control your thoughts, you can't control them. So here's the important distinction. There is a world of difference between thinking of and thinking about. So if I say, don't think of an elephant on roller skates, nothing I can do. I just thought about it. If you tell me, don't think of parking here, bam, nothing I can do. Happened again. That's called thinking of. Thinking of means the picture flashed onto the screen. You know, the pop-up in the old days of the internet. You used to get pop-ups everywhere, right? And you have to X them out. Pop-up ads. That's called thinking of. And I can't control that. I can't control what pops up in my mind, what I think of. And there are triggers that make me think of things, and they trigger memories or even things that never happened, but things that I'm afraid of. And bam, that stuff just pops up on the screen, and you can't do anything about thinking of it. You're going to think of it. But that's a world of difference from thinking about it. Thinking about it means you roll by that sign that says, don't even think of parking here. And you stop your car and you say, let's see. I'm not going to park in this man's driveway. That wouldn't be right. You can't block a man's driveway. But let me see. Any traffic behind me? No traffic behind me? Okay, good. So you know what? I'm just going to sit here for a minute and I'm going to fantasize about parking in this guy's driveway. I'm not going to do it. God forbid. That's not right to park in a man's driveway. But just for no traffic behind me still? Okay, good. So I'm going to think for a minute. Just going to envision myself backing up, parallel parking right there in front of this guy's driveway, getting out of the car, going shopping, coming back an hour later, put my stuff away in the trunk. Oh, you know what? I have some more stuff to do, more shopping. I'm going to, it's a good spot. I'm going to leave it there. No, I didn't do it. I'm just thinking. I'm just fantasy. It's just a fantasy. Just a fantasy. The whole thing takes 30 seconds. Okay? No traffic behind me still? Okay, fine. So I'm fantasizing. And after I'm done, had a nice 30-second fantasy. I imagined myself parking in this guy's driveway. My car fits perfectly in that spot. Beautiful, okay? I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Not only I didn't do it and I wouldn't do it. I was never going to do it. I just wanted to fantasize about what it would be like, okay? And then after 30 seconds, very good. I had a nice fantasy, and then I drive away. Okay. Was I in control of that? I understand that when the sign says don't think of parking here, and boom, the first thing that happens is I thought of parking there. That pop-up, I'm not in control of. But sitting there for 30 seconds and fantasizing about parking there, is that something I'm in control of? And if yes, what's the difference? So like I said, the difference is thinking of and thinking about. Thinking of means it occurred to me. It arose to my mind. The image popped up on the screen. That's thinking of. And I don't control that. Thinking about is when I direct the movie. Thinking about is when I am in control. I am actually meditating. I call it a meditation. Not a good meditation, but it's meditation nonetheless. And I'm going through it and I'm fantasizing, even if it's something I don't want. Not all fantasies are pleasant. And I'm imagining what's going to happen, and then the fear response, the anxiety, oh no, what's going to be? And there's nowhere to run because I'm not responding to sensory input around me that's outside of me. Now, my fear is all self-generated. It's a response to a meditation that I'm having, and there's nowhere to go because wherever you go, there you are. So I'll tell you a story. Jews like to tell stories, especially Hasidic Jews. We like to tell stories. There was once a man, about 200 years ago, in Poland, and he had trouble with controlling his thoughts. So he went to the great and holy Maggid, the Maggid of Mezrich, and he said, I have trouble controlling my thoughts. What should I do? So the Maggid told him, go to my disciple Reb Zev of Zhitomir, the city of Zhitomir in Ukraine, and Reb Zev will help you. So this fellow went to Zhitomir, and they didn't have addresses back then, so he asked around, where does Reb Zev live? And Reb Zev was known for his piety. He was a great rabbi, so people knew where he lived, and they said, over there, go over there. Now, it happened to be when he showed up in Zhitomir, and he didn't know a soul, not a single soul in that whole town. He didn't know anyone. He just knew the name of Reb Zev because the Maggid sent him. He said, go to my disciple Reb Zev. He'll help you to control your thoughts. So he went to Reb Zev's house and he knocked on the door. And I should tell you that when you arrived in town, it was Friday afternoon. It was Erev Shabbos. It was very close to the day of rest. And he starts knocking on the door. And if you've ever been to a Jewish house Erev Shabbos, you know that it's a lively scene. I mean, everyone's running around getting ready, and so people were running around excitedly. He could hear people in the house, and there was no questioning the fact there were people in the house. He could hear them, and he's knocking on the door, and nobody's coming to the door. Okay, maybe they can't hear me because they're busy. He knocks louder. Nobody comes to the door. He knocks louder again. Nobody. At this point, he has to think to himself, they're ignoring him. So he starts, pounding louder, and he says, Reb Zev, I'm here for Reb Zev. And he's knocking, pounding the door, Reb Zev, and he's knocking on the door. And nothing. And finally, it's so close to Shabbos, he has no choice. He's carrying his stuff. Where's he supposed to put his stuff? So he went to the shul, and he put his stuff down in shul, and they had basically hospitality for the indigent, for the poor, like for homeless people. Basically, that's the way it used to be, and like a homeless shelter in the shul. That's where he stayed on a bench in shul. That's where he slept for Shabbos. It was obviously a very unpleasant experience. So then after Shabbos, he is standing in shul, and somebody comes over to him and says, "Oh, a Gast in Stadt, a guest in town. Would you like to come to my house to make Havdalah and to have Malava Malka, to have a meal?" He says, "Sure." He's very grateful for the invitation. And as he gets to, walking and talking and getting to know the guy, he finds out this is Reb Zev. And then they go back to the house. This is the house he was knocking on. They walk right into the door. This is the house he was knocking on Erev Shabbos. He's very confused now. He sits down with Reb Zev, and Reb Zev talks to him, and it's very, very nice, very pleasant. But he can't get over the fact of what this Reb Zev did to him Erev Shabbos. So he says, "Listen, it's really bothering me. I was at your house before, yeah? You know that Friday afternoon I was here. You know that I don't know a soul in Zhitomir, and the only reason I came here is because your Rebbe, the Maggid, sent me to you, and I was knocking on your door out of Shabbos. You didn't answer. I know you were inside, and I know you heard me, and how do you think I feel about that? Your Rebbe sent me to you to teach me how to control my thoughts, and then I get this treatment." Reb Zev says, "Why did the Maggid send you?" He says, "To teach me how to control my thoughts." Reb Zev says, "Yeah, well, exactly. That was the first lesson that I taught you when you arrived in Zhitomir." "What lesson did I teach you?" "That just because there's a knock at the door doesn't mean I open it up." What was Reb Zev saying? How did Reb Zev know that this was the lesson the guy needed? Who knows? Who knows? These are holy people. The point is, though, he knew that this was the lesson this guy needed to learn. And not only he knew the lesson the guy needed to learn, he knew how to teach it to him. And he taught it to him with a very poignant living example, with a metaphor. Just because there's a knock at the door doesn't mean I need to open it up. In other words, I can't control whether or not a certain thought knocks at the door. Open up, let me in, come, think about me. I can't control that. That's called thinking of. Thinking of is like the knock at the door, the elephant on roller skates, the parking spot. Can't control. Opening the door and saying, okay, come on in. That's thinking about. That's the choice. That's where it goes from an impulse that I cannot control to a behavior that I can control. I can't control whether or not the knock will come and say, hey, let's worry right now. Maybe that guy without a mask coughed on us and gave us corona, right? I can't control that knock at the door. But I can refuse to open the door. I can say, all right, I heard, but this is not what we're going to think about. This is not what we're going to think. We're not going to sit and do a meditation, a fear meditation on this subject right now. It's not happening. Now, I told you before, because we don't realize we have this power and we don't exercise this choice, unfortunately, a lot of us, what we do is we self-medicate and we numb ourselves either with a chemical or with a behavior or staring at a screen, and we try to just distract ourselves from the knock at the door. But the good news is you don't need all of that. You don't need to numb yourself. You don't need to distract yourself. You can just choose not to answer the door, like Reb Zev didn't answer the door. You just have to get comfortable with the knocking. You have to get comfortable with the fact that sometimes that voice is going to come to you over and over again. Hey, let's worry. Hey, let's get nervous. Hey, let's start catastrophizing. And you have to let them knock and say, that's fine. I can't control what you make me think of, but I do choose what I'm going to think about. And here's the beauty. The beauty is that the intense emotions that I get are mostly, almost completely, a product of what I think about, not what I think of. So by refusing to think about these things, even if I, from time to time, think of them against my own will, I actually eliminate most, if not all, of the emotional reaction. And all I'm left with is just the annoyance of the knock at the door. I mean, it is annoying. We're not going to pretend it's not annoying. It's annoying to get the knock at the door. Let's think about scary things. Let's worry. Let's catastrophize. It is annoying, but it's only annoying. It's just a knock at the door, some nudnik who won't go away. But it's not like opening the door and letting the nudnik come into my house and sit down at the table and talk to me for an hour about tons of scary stuff that's going to make me miserable. Not going to do that anymore. So this tool of Daig B'Lev Ish Yashchena, and our sages say Yasichena Midaitoi B'Masiach Das, remove your mind from it. What that means is not that you're going to all of a sudden have this superhuman power never to think of things that you don't want to think of. Who has that control? None of us. What it does mean is I'm not going to open the door and allow this to become the subject of a meditation. I just have to get comfortable with the fact that the impulse for thought is not the same as thought. I'm just using a little bit different terminology. I called it before thinking of and thinking about. So if you want different words for it, the impulse for thought and actual thought. Impulse for thought is the pop-up. What can you do? Nothing. But actual thought, that's the behavior. That's the choice. The meditation. And that we have complete power over. So, yeah, it's not fun to have a knock at the door. It actually can be quite annoying. But annoyance is a heck of a lot better than dread and panic and anxiousness that that overtakes us. So we just have to get comfortable with the fact that the pop-ups may never go away. The internal voice, which we call the Yetzer Hara, is going to always try to find a vulnerable time to come bother you with a bad idea, with a bad suggestion of something to think about. But we're going to respond and say, no, not today. You can make me think of it, but I'm not going to think about it. I have here a private chat. There's a chat box on the side. Somebody asking for my email. I'm going to tell you something better. Because if you email me, 90% chance it'll get lost with a dozen other emails that are going to come in at the same time. But what you could do right now is you could just send me whatever you want to send me. You can send it out privately in the private chat. And in fact, I open this invitation to everybody. If you have any questions, anything you want to discuss, post it right here in the chat here. Hello and hello here. See the chat box? Except don't write it to everyone. You can choose. Can you choose? Do we have that option? That you can choose which participant to.
I think they can only chat to you or any host.
Can they send to me? Yeah.
No, David, you can choose who you want to send the question to. So if they put Rabbi Taub, they can ask him privately.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Okay, I'm starting to get private chats. Okay, great.
What's your phone
Okay,
number?
so it does work. Yep, I see it's worked. I got one already. Here, all right. And I got another one. All right. Okay, fine. Fine. All right, so you're saying private question not to be public. Okay, you could email me. Anyone can email me whenever you want, but I'm going to tell you right now that, oops, wrote it wrong. Okay, you can email me and I will try to look, but I get many, many, many emails a day, and I'm just going to be totally honest with you. I don't even read all of the emails that I get. I try to read them, but I don't see many of them, and I don't respond to. I try to respond something, but very often it's a complicated question, and I can't. So email me at your own risk, and please do not feel rejected if you don't get a response. It's just either I didn't see it, or or I saw it and I meant to respond, but I didn't have time to sit down and write an answer. And
Rabbi Taub. Rabbi Taub, hi, it's Michelle Siffer from Manchester. I'm head of the Herschel White Centre, working with David to organise. I just wanted to ask a question. I've been a bit preoccupied with other things going on. Basically, I want to know if you gave any tips on. So I understood everything you were saying, and it was really helpful to me because, if I'm very honest, I've been through a lot of trauma. My husband passed away in January after a long illness, and then we're just coming out of that, and then Corona hit. So it was like, Baruch Hashem, I've got a lot to be thankful to Hashem for. But when you get these periods where I was getting a very severe anxiety where your mind starts to race, especially I got the virus as well, like I was going to pass away in the night because it was very scary. What tips, aside from taking Cocotamol or watching movies for 3 hours and not going to sleep, can you do to control your mind? Because that's what you were talking about before.
Yeah, but there's no trick to it. It's very, very simple. We live in so much dread that the knock will come at the door, that just at the door devastates us. But once you realize that there are 2 steps, there's the knock at the door and there's opening the door, the experience will change. So I will invite you to try it out tonight, when you're trying to get to sleep and the anxious thoughts pop up in your mind. And if you can just accept that it's just an annoying knock, it's an invitation to become preoccupied, but it's not actually being preoccupied. You're not preoccupied yet until you choose to, until you respond. If you can just realize that it's just static, it's just annoying noise. It's just, imagine it's a cat shrieking outside that you can't make be quiet, or it's some loud car driving in front of your house, and view it with about that much attachment. See how you experience it when you do it that way. I have here about 10 different private chat questions. I want to try to get through some of them. Question about I have physical symptoms of anxiety and constantly think about how I am feeling physically. How can I control not symptom check all the time? Okay. So here's what you described here as a real vicious cycle, because the anxiety causes you physical symptoms, which of course, imagine if you were walking through the forest and you saw a bear, okay, it would make your heart race, it would raise your blood pressure, right? You'd have physiological reactions to that. Now imagine if you didn't walk through the forest and saw a bear, but in your mind there's a bear, and then there's a bear every 10 minutes, right? So you get physiological responses, and eventually if you do it over and over again, you're going to feel sick. So then what happens is you start feeling sick, and then you start thinking about the fact that you're sick. You have 2 things to think about, to meditate on. Whatever it was that you were having anxiety about in the first place, and then the anxiety caused you to be sick, and then you think about how sick you are, and you can have anxiety about that. Simple answer is I would invite you to regard thoughts of physical illness or comfort in the same way we were discussing before about the knock at the door. It is almost unavoidable that if you are having physical symptoms or discomfort or pain, that you're going to notice it. And it's okay to notice it. You're talking about symptoms. Okay. The problem isn't that you notice that, your breathing is, you're having shallow breathing. Let's just make up a symptom. That's not the problem. The problem is when you go and Google it and you spend 6 hours trying to find out what disease you have. So I would invite you to do is, again, to regard this as a knock at the door. A knock at the door, which is almost unavoidable, because, if your body hurts, it hurts. And that's a knock at the door. There's no way not to hear that. But just to regard it, okay, I heard that. Yeah, fine. My body hurts. But not to take the next step. The next step is when you start to think about it. Thinking about it means, what do I have? Don't do that. Don't do that. If you need to tell yourself, well, if it's a problem, so, I'll schedule a doctor's appointment. Okay, we'll find out. We'll find out if it's a problem. Or if it's really a problem, okay, so I'll call 911. Okay, so I have, or what do you guys call it? 999, whatever you call it. Okay, so I have a plan, whatever it is. The point is to be comfortable with the fact that your body is going to come to you and say, hey, think about me. And you're going to say, no, I've noticed you. I acknowledge you're knocking at the door. And that's enough I'm not going to think about you. I'm not a doctor. I can't self-treat. I can't do anything about it anyway, so there's no purpose. I'm not going to sit here and diagnose my own illness and find a cure for it. I can't do that anyways, so I'm not going to spend my mental energy thinking about it. And that's it. Okay, fine. Want to be noticed? You've been noticed. You're acknowledged. Okay, fine. That's it. Question here. What about frontline staff? What if the risk of infection is huge, therefore based on fact? Well, all anxiety is based on a little bit of fact. I shouldn't say all. Sometimes anxiety can be absolutely, completely based on something that has no basis in reality. Okay, but that's you're talking about something severe. Most anxiety is based on fact, right? Like if I'm anxious about getting corona, well, there is such a thing called corona, and it is contagious. It is a real thing. All right, doesn't mean I have it or I'm going to get it, but it's most anxiety on fact. So the question: what if you're frontline staff and therefore you have a higher risk? Okay, fine. So you have a higher risk. That's true. But having a higher risk doesn't mean that you have higher anxiety. It just means that you have to take more precautions. And there are precautions that people who are frontline staff do that regular people don't have to do. And that's what you do. You just take the precautions. But it doesn't actually make sense to say, well, somebody who was able to telecommute for the past 3 months and hasn't had to leave the house and had Amazon delivering all of their groceries for 3 months, they have to stay up at night thinking about corona. But if you're a nurse in a hospital, then you should definitely stay up all night worrying about having corona. Why is the increased risk, why is that a reason for increased worry? The worry has nothing to do with the degree of risk. The precautions has to do with the risk. So take the precautions. Take the precautions. And if you are a professional who deals with these things, so your industry has certain standards they've developed to take these precautions, and you do what you can do. You do what you can do, and then the rest is in God's hands. Okay. Someone says here, I heard that the way to overcome the thoughts is to think of them and let them float through your head, not to fight them coming. Yeah, that's basically what we're saying. Yeah, let it float by. I'm calling it, let it be a knock at the door that you ignore. You can call it floating, whatever it is. The thing is, don't engage it. Let it be. Be comfortable with the fact that you have an obnoxious neighbor who's loud and makes parties at 3 a.m. Okay, that's basically what it is. Right. You know what I mean? The obnoxious neighbor who makes parties at 3 a.m. I'm not talking about an actual human being. I'm talking about this neighbor in here who makes parties at 3 a.m, 4 a.m, 5 a.m. Okay. Not those people with underlying conditions. Same thing as people who are frontline. The same exact thing. So you have increased risk, so take increased precautions. It doesn't mean that you should worry anymore. Okay. How do we control the thinking about thoughts? Please try it out. You will see, once you accept the fact that you can't handle the thinking of, you will come to recognize and see where something goes from thinking of to thinking about. And when you're not bothered by the thinking of anymore, you're going to see that you actually have a choice about what you think about. Okay. What if you have a pop-up of something that you have to face, something real, all repeated? Okay. Then face it. But here's the thing. If it's something that's not happening right now, so thinking about it right now isn't going to help me. So I'll deal with it when I deal with it. Sometimes, you just write it down for yourself. So you're thinking about this interview you have a week from now. So sometimes just write it down. I have an interview next week, Monday, 7 p.m. And next time it comes to you, let's think about it. You know what? No, there's nothing to think about. We already wrote it down. Don't worry. We'll deal with it at the time. Okay. Someone says, brilliant talk. Okay, thank you. Great fan of John Kabat-Zinn. Can you recommend Jewish positive meditations to reframe and reduce anxiety? Yeah, sure. We're going to talk about that in another session, about positive meditations, definitely. We will talk about, because now we're talking about the not thinking, but later on we'll talk about the thinking, good stuff to think about. Okay. How do we control thinking about thoughts, especially when feeling vulnerable? So like I'm saying, just be aware of the difference between the impulse for thought and the thought itself. I'm telling you, just the awareness. We associate, see, we morph one thing. We think that just because we've thought of something, that's it, we're off to the races. You know, it's like the person who says, oh, because I was supposed to go to bed at 11, now it's 5, I might as well stay up all night, okay? So obviously that kind of thinking is self-defeating. The same thing. Oh, because I thought of the thing that gives me anxiety, now I have to meditate on it for 6 hours. No, but you have to learn to distinguish between the two things. Once you know that there's a distinction, then you have freedom to have choice in the area where you actually choose. Okay. This has been helpful with some things. I can definitely manage in a better way. I've been told I may have PTSD associated with treatment of me by profession. Could you possibly speak with me at another time? Okay. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Trauma is real. Trauma is real. And trauma will knock at the door very, very loud, very persistently. And I would definitely seek some professional help for dealing with the trauma. But I would tell you, ultimately, a lot of what you will do is very similar to what we're talking about here. So this is a tool that you can start using now. And even when you've done some more healing from your trauma, you will continue to use this tool. A lot of times when we've been through something very scary, our mind tells us that it's happening again now. And we have to be able to know that that's just a knock at the door, that that scary thing's not really happening right now. I'm going to try to get all the questions. More questions keep coming in. Okay, I'm going to try to knock them all out here. How do we help our children with anxiety? Teach your children about their thoughts. Teach them about how their mind works. Tell them this talk, but in an age-appropriate way. Tell them all about it. Stage fright? I don't know. I get nervous every time I speak. It's not a problem. I get scared every time I talk. Here's the thing. If I can't sleep because I have a speech tomorrow, that's no good. But if I'm scared because I'm standing in front of people right now, I just call that's part of the game. You know, it is scary to talk in front of people. Okay. I only get worried if I'm scared about it, you know, before it happens. But if I'm scared while it's happening, yeah, that's good. I think speakers should be a little bit nervous while they're speaking. That makes them more respectful of their audience's time. Okay. Advice for lonely people who have lots of spare time and end up worrying. Yeah, well, you have to have, we have to be productive. There's no question. Sometimes lonely is something we can't control, but productive, we do have control. And you have to be involved in something. You were put here to accomplish something in this world, and take it as a sign that your mind is telling you that it needs more. You know, you're hungry. You're mentally hungry. You're understimulated. Take it as a sign that you're understimulated. Question: is it usher to think of things that Torah forbids? No, it's not usher to think of things that Torah forbids. It's usher to think about things that Torah forbids. Not only is it not usher to think of things that Torah forbids, but there's a mitzvah you can only do if you think of things that Torah forbids. There's a mitzvah, we say it in Shema. What does it mean? Don't go straying after your heart. In your heart. It means means I saw it. Okay, I didn't think of it. It was put in my face. But what does it mean? Don't go straying after your heart. It means your heart gave you an impulse of doing something forbidden, the Torah forbids, and then you said, no, I'm not going to do that. Not only I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to fantasize it either. So Torah doesn't forbid you from thinking of things. It can't forbid you from thinking of things. It forbids you from thinking about things. Okay. I think I got all the questions. Beautiful. All right, Rabbi Jaffe, back to you. Unmute
David,
yourself.
you need to unmute. David, unmute.
There we go. I'm unmuted. It's lovely talking, and then you find out you're talking to yourself. Rabbi Taub, thank you. Really thank you. You simplify the most complicated issues, or what seem most complicated, and when you finish with them, it's all very simple. I just hope I can take it.
Simple, but not easy.
Okay. Okay.
It's definitely difficult work. There's a difference between, there's complicated and simple, and then there's easy and hard. So this stuff, it's hard work, but it's not so complicated.
Okay. My mother always used to tell me, open a safer, right, and you'll fall asleep instantly. You won't be worried about anything. Start to get involved, right, and put you straight to sleep. To the lonely person, give me a call on 929-9999, and I'll get you so busy you won't have time to worry about anything. Helping out in the community, we've got lots of other people that need you to help them. Anybody with any questions, if you want to give any questions in advance of the talk in 2 weeks, either send them to Herschel Wise or send them to me on rabbi@elubavitch.com. Again, I want to thank the Herschel Wise Center, Michelle, Yossi, for helping put this on. And this evening was dedicated to memory of Adrian, Oliver Sholem, and to remind everybody that next week there's no talk, but in 2 weeks there will be another talk, and in 3 weeks, and in 4 weeks. It's spirituality and tranquility during COVID. That is on, let me see the date, and the 19th of June, no, the 1st of July, and then there's two weeks on relationships. One's parent-child, and one husband-wife. They're all going to be fantastic. Today with just a little bit of a taster, but I know as we get into the more meaty stuff coming up in the next few weeks, it's going to get more and more powerful. So again, thank you, Rabbi Taub. God bless you.